On talkSPORT 2 with me, Will Gavin, and Harry Symeou from Chronicles of a Gooner. Of course, we are doing an Arsenal special, and we're going to talk some Declan Rice now. An opening bid rejected, we understand, for the West Ham captain last week, with the Hammers holding out for a fee well in excess of £100 million. Suddenly mentions of Man City creeping into the mix as well, sending Calvin Phillips back in the other direction. Could that be the thing that swings it? Will the Gunners cave in to their demands? Let's hear from Hammers fan Dan Lawless, who told Transfer Insider's brilliant nightly show over on talkSPORT, if you've not heard it yet, West Ham should hold their ground because Rice is unlikely to force a move. Dan Lawless speaking there, saying Declan Rice not the kind of man to down tools and force a move out. But, we heard from Sullivan on talkSPORT speaking to Jim White, and he said there very clearly, 18 months ago, we offered Declan Rice £200,000 a week. He chose not to take it. That's cost him £10 million in the last 18 months. It's because he wants to leave. Now's the time for him to leave. I think there is some room for negotiation here. I'm not so sure I buy the whole Declan Rice isn't going to down tools thing.
No, of course. I mean, West Ham have down tools, basically, by telling the world that they're going to let him go. I couldn't believe that was made public in the way that it was. Now, I think it's fair that Declan Rice has, given them some extra time and in terms of staying on past that big contract offer. And yes, West Ham point out the money that he's lost, and all of that makes a lot of sense to me. And it does feel like whatever happens this summer, the relationship between Declan Rice and West Ham is going to remain strong and intact and brilliant. That's how it should be. But for West Ham to come out and publicly say, we're going to let him go, I think weakened their negotiating position right at the start of the transfer window. And to me, it made no sense whatsoever. Arsenal will have to go in excess of £100 million, you feel, to get this deal done. But will that all be paid up front? Absolutely not. And I think the vast majority of that will be paid in instalments, with some of it going into sort of add-ons that obviously we heard initially West Ham felt were slightly unachievable. Champions League wins, Premier League wins, all of that stuff. I think Declan Rice wants to join Arsenal. I think Arsenal are really big on him and want to make that happen. And I think they will, to be honest. I'm not massively concerned. The window's been open for a matter of days. And I think that over the course of the next couple of weeks, Arsenal will get that done. As for the Manchester City interest, am I concerned about that? Not really. It feels to me like that's the type of thing that you put out into the ether when you want to hurry the club up that are trying to sign your player. And there is no other real club that they could throw in that would have that type of impact like City, because they've got the money. The appeal is there because they're a brilliant side. The appeal to work under Pep Guardiola would attract most. So, yeah, I think that was just a convenient thing to put out into
I get what you're saying. I do think that the Man City link, it feels more real to me than that, purely because now we know that Gundogan is on their release list. That adds to me the idea that they will need some strengthening in that midfield. Now, if they believe that Calvin Phillips, after a year learning under Pep, and now he's going to hopefully be fully healthy going into next season, can be a bigger contributor to what they do, then that makes some sense that they can stick with that. But also, if you can give Calvin Phillips £50 million and some promise of some add-ons to get Declan Rice, I think you probably do it if you're Man City. So that's why it does feel a little more real to me. I think the thing for me when you look at that interest, and Arsenal recently, it hasn't happened to as much as it did in the past. Yeah, we had the Mudryk signing with Chelsea, but that's Chelsea throwing around their financial weight and their money in a way that most clubs can't. But I think about the way that Liverpool have missed out on both Tchouameni and now Bellingham in the last 2 years, when they had an earlier chance to sign them, didn't, and end up missing out on them. And I do just think to myself, I understand there have to be negotiations. I understand your club don't want to seem to be being mugs and seem to be just being taken to the cleaners so that everyone's going to come in and expect you to pay whatever they want you to pay. You've got other negotiations to think of. But we all know Declan Rice is a £100 million player, so just pay £100 million and get it done.
Yeah, and I think they will. But I think had they gone in and paid 100 million, one lump sum straight up from the beginning, everybody would have gone, oh my God, they've overpaid for Declan Rice. Because I'm not sure that Declan Rice is a £100 million player. I think in today's market, you can add the inflation onto what should be his price because he's an England international, because of the fact that, he's a key part of West Ham's side and has been, because he's just captained them to silverware. All of that stuff adds on to the price. But, is Declan Rice a £100 million player? I don't think there are many £100 million players in the world. And this is the sort of dangerous precedent we've set over the last few years. As for Manchester City, I don't think that he's a Pep Guardiola player. I really don't. I think that technically Declan Rice isn't quite at that level of an Ilkay Gundogan or even of a Rodri who plays that little bit deeper. I think he's powerful. I think he's athletic. I think he's got great defensive instincts. But I don't think that Pep Guardiola would go and drop £100 million on Declan Rice. And where you mentioned Chelsea there, I get that because Chelsea have shown themselves to go crazy in the transfer market. You can look at a few examples of Manchester City overpaying for players, but generally speaking, over the last few years, I think they've actually done quite smart business. And that's why when people say, City have ruined the transfer market, I disagree with that. I think Chelsea have more to answer for, and I think Manchester United do too. So I don't see Man City being as interested because I don't think he'd be the perfect fit.
Let me say what my concerns are with all of this, and one thing is Declan Rice is a £100 million player because that's what he's worth to his selling club. That will always be my reasoning on any transfer, is that it's not about what he's worth in the market. It's not about what transfer markets say he's worth. It's not about what Fabrizio Romano, any reporter says he's worth. It's what he's worth to the club selling him if they've still got him under contract, which is why even if it is instalments, even if it is add-ons, they'll get the three figures they want from him because they feel he's worth that. And I do think we've entered an age where a £100 million player is very different to even what it was 2 years ago, let alone 5 years ago, 10 years ago.